this was a completely new vernacular for me, and I didn't have Andy there to help me, although, as I joked, you've only done biped mammals, and now I've got to do a serpent reptile, so, you know, I don't know how your work will translate into Smauging. But I mean, he is the king of it, he's the don of it, he's the pioneer of it, and he's the master of it, and why that man isn't just literally weighed under with Oscars is a sad, I think, truth of why it's not being recognised for what it is. It's the unloved child of cinema because it falls between SFX and animation. And yet it's such a visceral, live, performance-driven form of art, a form of extrapolated cinematic art. It's something that, you know, green screen, you know, I understand Ian's grumbles about that. It's hard, it's really hard because you're continually projecting all of your performance to a ping pong ball and there's green screen, and yet you are Gandalf. And, you know, you're in Gandalf's costume and you're doing Gandalf's voice, you've got Gandalf's makeup, you've got Gandalf's continuity, you've got Gandalf's lines. Well, you have you have the lines that you're playing, or the character you're playing when you're motion capturing, but you don't have the same context. You're in a room a little bit like this, in fact, very much like this, wood panelled. You've got infrared sensors all around the roof, the kind of cornicing of the roof. You've got this grey carpet. My God, I could actually do it now. I won't. And you're just free to position yourself into something which, after you walk on set and you feel, I mean, most of you might have read me saying this before, but you feel very self-conscious because you're in an all-in-one grey suit and you've got little reflectors all over you and your face is dotted in a sort of aboriginal pattern of white dots, which you have a cast, which in my case was taken for Khan, and then that Khan cast was used for my face, which was put on my head, holes drilled through it before it was put on my face, that is, and then these dots planted on it so that every facial movement was kind of corresponding with a coordinate, which they then mapped in, which you get a lot of in the finished film. And you feel like a complete booby, you know. It's embarrassing. You're kind of walking on, going, "Hi, everybody. I feel silly." And they're like, "Oh, Benedict, great. It's do you want a coffee? Or just sit down. We've got a chair over there. It's got your character's name on it. It's Smaug. So yeah, Peter's going to be down in a minute. So do you want a juice, or do you want to, you know, sit down and relax? I mean, we can, you know, we've done the range of motion, and that's the other thing. You do a range of motion exercise, so you kind of literally move your limbs, your arms, your head, whatever. Limbs. Your arms are limbs, you know what I mean? You move your body to get like a full expression of what you might do in the space, the volume as they call it. And then you're on set being embarrassed. And then Peter comes down, he's padding, you know, barefoot, going, "Oh, Benedict, do you want to talk about it? Or do you want to just do something? I mean, it'll be, what do you want to do?" And you go, "Well, let's talk about it first, because I'm feeling a bit silly. Can I take this helmet off that has a camera in front of my face?" Yeah, whatever you want. Cool, okay, so this bit in the script, and then you work out the intentions and the actions and the shape of the scene and the character's motivation, just all the page one acting shit, and then you get back up to being, you know, a fully kitted out booby. And in my case, I'd done a little bit. The thing you said about research, so I'm jumping out of that question just for a bit, because I remembered I didn't really answer that. It's a security blanket. Not all of it, very little of it ends up on screen often. And it's just to take a little bit more possession of the extraordinariness of some of the things I'm asked to do, because it's so far removed from my experience. So it just gets me a little bit more, it just gives me a little bit more courage to pretend to be something I'm so far from. And so, for example, playing a fire-breathing dragon of however many 100 feet, who's ancient, lives in a pile of gold under a mountain in a kingdom of Erebor, who breathes fire, you know, that's not my daily routine. So I went to the reptile house at London Zoo, and I looked at lizards and Komodo dragons, and I had some fun with that. And then I tried to work that articulation into my body so that the boys and girls at Weta would have something to base my kind of physicality on when they extrapolated it into the extraordinary finished results you see. They are the best in 48 frames in IMAX, I have to say, having seen it in both frame rates. That part of the frame rate thing is unequivocally brilliant, I think. It feels like Martin's acting with a real live and a model, or at least, you know, at least a model, if not a real dragon. I mean, it's extraordinary. The seams between the real and the special effects are just, you cannot see it with that frame rate. It's incredible. So I brought that work into this grey carpeted, wooden walled room and thrashed myself about and did voice work, and I absolutely loved it. I felt like a kid again. You know, you feel free because you can only attempt to throw an imagination at that problem. You can't research that one. You can't read books about when I was a dragon, when I was a young dragon, and you know. What happens when you get crazy with gold as a dragon, you know. So I kind of just I lost myself in it, and I had a really good time. Some of the awful photographs of me pulling really quite terrifying faces on the internet have apparently shown, but you got to go the distance. And I loved it. I really, really loved it. And you know, I've done physical work before. I mean, Stephen Hawking and obviously Frankenstein as well. And all my work, I try to, you know, we often get criticized as Western actors as being head up, you know. And even though our verbal culture is a very linguistic-based, oral culture, very much about the text in England, we do some great physical work. I mean, it's, you know, the land that Simon McBurney came from, to name but one, and DV8 and all sorts of extraordinary multidisciplinary kind of theatre companies, as well as you know, dance troupes and everything else. So yeah, I love involving that aspect of it and challenging my body as much as my head with what I do.
So that's an experience where you're working basically in a room with a, you know, a relatively small number of people, I would imagine. Then you go to
can I just interrupt? Sorry, sure. Is anyone else hot?
Yeah, I think it is.
Can we turn up the aircon, Luke? Would that be possible? Someone's waving their hands, but we're not getting a draft.
Okay, so there's that kind of an acting experience. Then there's the theater.
Yeah.
And you know, it seems almost invariably you hear actors say that no matter what the perks of or pleasures of film or TV acting may be, there's something really special about going back to the theater, and that the only thing that they say maybe sometimes you know, you hear gripes about is that it can become, you know, perhaps a tad monotonous. But for you guys with Frankenstein, with this alternating of roles and the way you approach it, I think it was such a fascinating thing. And so just generally, theater acting, and particularly in that experience, is it something you enjoy a lot?
Very, very, very much. I mean, you know, I think the rehearsal process in theatre is probably the most kind of privileged part of the whole experience of being an actor. It's wonderful. You have that wonderful sort of suspended time when it's just a room. There's no one judging you. I mean, you're working hard because you want to please your director, but you're with a company of actors, and you're discovering each other and the world of the play, and how to, you know, bring off your part in it. And that's it's wonderful. It's wonderful. It's very cloistered. It's not what obviously it in the end is about. It's obviously about sharing that work, but which is always a painful birthing process, like that thing of having the womb-like experience of safety and security, and compounding whatever the world of the play is and whatever the requirements are. It's then you've got to realize that you've got to then get on stage or get in front of a camera to perform it. And it was a joy because there were such extremely different characters, although obviously with thematic crossovers and reflections, the creator and the creation. So yeah, there was a lot of stuff that, I mean, on some nights very early in previews, there were literal lines that were crossing over. Always on my part, I hasten to add, for Johnny's sake. He was pretty DLP. But yeah, no, I love that. I really love that. And in fact, that was a complete kind of condition of doing the job. I wanted to do it only if we did both roles, both parts, because it's unique. And yeah, it's the hardest thing about theatre. It is so nourishing, like I said, because of the rehearsal room environment, but mainly because you have an immediate idea of what it is that you're doing. But the real trick, and I think, again, it really, I hark back to, well, the Frankenstein experience, but before that with Katie at the Royal Court, the trick of believing that you're doing something for the first time is a very, very hard one to achieve. And when, in all honesty, there are very rare moments in the third month of a run where you're not very conscious of your audience and the cough that just happened and what's going on in your belly and whether you act a little bit too soon to the performance tonight and what the hell am I going to do with the people that come see the play afterwards, and you know all these outside kind of voices, because you know it's so familiar. It's very, very hard to trick yourself into unlearning the muscle memory, and it's not like film whereby you can change your delivery. You can give a lot of choices in multiple takes on a film. So some actors don't. I like to simply because it's such a rare and invigorating thing to be able to do, and that's why I like to mix it up. Because then when you go back to film, the things that are weird about film, like the early weird unsociable hours,
No
anyway.
continuity. Out of order,
Yeah, exactly. All those new problems are compensated by the fact that you get, and also not playing the whole character arc. Exactly, like the continuity thing is a massive thing. You have to really jump in and know exactly where you are in your character storyline. But then you can change. You can give a different within the parameters, like I said earlier, of the tactics your character can employ to achieve his objectives through your understanding of the character and his limitations as well as his strengths or hers. You know, you can still have quite a broad canvas to shift things. You do in theatre, but it's very hard to come in and do anything more than maybe 5 or 6 very different things. And also, you don't want to throw the whole company. You can't go, guys, I know we're in the 3rd month of this, but can we just rehearse that scene where I'm a little bit worried about? And that's hard. That's really hard. Because it is a job, and this is a job. What I do is a job. So, you know, there are moments when it becomes like a job, and you have to balance that with the craft and the art. But, you know, I love it. I'm very lucky to be able to call what I love as an art a job.
Well, before we close with this question from one of the thousands of people who submitted questions over Twitter, which you were nice enough to pick the winning question, I have to exert a little editorial privilege and throw in one more, because this was something that I know is very important to you, and I think it deserves to be talked about, which is Parade's End, which was another great performance of yours. And particularly, there's a scene where essentially you're having to bid farewell to or say that you don't love a person who you do love, and do the honorable thing over the thing that might be easier. And I just wonder if you can take us back to that moment, because when somebody once before asked...
It's slightly... I think the scene I was referring to, if it's the same one, is the one in front of the fender. I think it's in episode 2, where he decides all the hypocrisy of this invented Department of Strategy in the civil service. All the hypocrisy where he's trying to basically massage the message by faking figures through the brilliant mathematical mind that he is and political mind that he is. He can't do it. He just keeps on saying, no, but this is the answer. And the War Office is saying, no, but it can't be. You've got to make it work so that this is the answer. And he goes, well, just fuck off then. I'm going to throw myself in front of the front line, and I'm not going to, I can't function the way I functioned. And he meets up with Valentine, who is furious with him for underselling his ability and also for putting himself in harm's way because they haven't consumed what is clearly a blatantly very strong attraction. And she knows that he might well end his life on the Western Front, and she thinks it's a waste of how he could be helping. And he has to stand up for what he believes, and it's a profound. I'm very rarely happy with what I do. There's always something I could do better. It's not really that. It's not really going, oh yeah, I got that right. It's just more, bless you. It's more who that person is in that moment. And Tom hated it. Stoppard hated it. He was like, I just feel it's too on the nose. It's just I don't like it when Christopher has to explain who he is, which is what's brilliant about the rest of the adaptation. It's so reliant on the idea that actors and directors understand subtext. I could read the book for the most amazing subtext and profound insight, you know, internal monologues, you know, literally all streams of consciousness in this modernist novel, to work their character into layers that you get a little boop, you know, kind of top mark of. And yet, this is a moment where he goes, I stand for this. This is what I believe. This is what I hold true to. This, and I love that man. I really love that character, and I loved what he had to say about what he felt England was and what he felt society and the duty you have within society, the respect of your elders and of your past as well as your present, to, you know, obey and help those above and below your station in life. And, you know, he supports McMaster, who's a self-made man who's father was a shipping clerk in somewhere, I've forgotten the line, I think it's Liverpool, I don't know. But the point is, you know, he's not against meritocracy winning. He's not about a fixed social order, but he's about wherever you are in that at that given time, you better be good to those above and below you. And I just think they're very good principles.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, the last one before we liberate you is going to come from Twitter, and this is from Naomi at Cumberbatch Web. And
I know.
And Naomi's question was, Benedict, do you have a particular motto or creed by which you try to live your life?
Well, and I'm going to paraphrase this. It's a Sousa quote, and a fan actually sent me a card with it on the front recently, and it's something like love as though you've never been hurt, dance as though no one's watching you, sing as though no one's listening, and live as though heaven is on earth. And I just think that's great. That's about grabbing it all, enjoying it, and being profoundly lost in your experience of living on this earth.